Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our Friday Night SmackDown recap from just a couple of days ago. This is going to be the Friday the 15th edition of August of Friday Night SmackDown. So, how about we get started and underway, talk through everything that took place across the course of the night, and discuss all the happenings that took place. We will kick things off with the MFTs, who would make their way down to the ring at the start of the show. And they would basically open things up with Solosikoa saying that they run SmackDown. Solo looks back to his match last week with Samizayn and how they stomped him out on Raw, as punishment for the victory for Samizayn on SmackDown. He would go on to say how Jimmy and Jacob are also stomped out, but then that would promote Samizayn to make his arrival. Sami would come on down. He would ask to talk to Solosikoa, which Solo agrees to. But then Sami looks at the MFTs and goes, okay, are we actually talking here or not? So Solo, gets the idea. He then basically orders his MFTs to leave the ring, and that leaves just him and Sami to have a conversation. Sami looks back to Raw and basically how if he had won that match against Rusev, he could have been maybe in the world title match at Clash of Paris. That's where his head was at. He wants to be in that world title picture. So obviously he's got a lot of beef with Solo for taking that opportunity away from him as far as he's aware. He actually thanks Solo then for freeing his mind, allowing him to go on to do other things, and to put his focus elsewhere, and also to target things that he hasn't already done in WWE. That would then lead him to the United States Championship, which is around Solo Sikoa's waist, saying that Sami has never actually won the title before. Solo would start to get defensive, saying that he won't hold it for a very long time, and that Sami doesn't even go on SmackDown. So he needs to leave his ring. He needs to leave his show. He needs to get out of here. This would be a perfect opportunity then for Samizayn to announce that he is now a part of the SmackDown roster. So he's officially left Raw as of this moment, and he is now on Friday nights. He would then go on to get up in the face of Solo Sikoa. He's getting very defensive now, and that would lead Solo to attack Sami. Moments later, the MFTs get involved, and it's a 4-on-1 situation at that point. But then we have Jimmy Uso, and then shortly after, Jacob Fatu come on down to the ring to even the odds, I guess more so. But they do sort of even the odds because they then send MFTs out of the ring and they clear things up. Just in time for Nick Aldis to come on down, and he would announce a 3 versus 3 tag team match for later on in the show. It'll be Sami, Jimmy, and Jacob against any 3 of the MFTs. That would be in the main event of tonight's show. So once we moved on from the opening segment, then we would have our first match. This would be our one and only one-on-one matchup of the night. More catered towards the tag team division with who's involved, but a singles match nonetheless. We would have Alexa Bliss going one-on-one with Piper Niven of the Secret Service. So Alexa and Piper, they put on a match that basically goes down, I guess, the way that most people would assume it would do. A little bit of back and forth for the majority. Piper's dominating for a semi-large part of it. Somewhat of her power and stature. Alexa Bliss, though, fighting from underneath, eventually does turn things around and would pick up the win over Piper Niven. But the Secret Service wouldn't let that slide. They would storm the ring and they would attack Alexa Bliss. Charlotte being there at ringside as well, she would get involved. But it would be the Secret Service for once and, in the first time in forever, it seems, really. Secret Service would actually take out Alexa and Charlotte Flair. And they would stand tall at the end of the segment, actually looking like they're on top at the end of one of these segments that they're involved in, which doesn't happen very often. Yeah, they lost the match, but at least they had something to say at the end where they were the ones that were standing tall once all was said and done. So maybe a little bit of dominance towards the end of that segment there from the Secret Service, which was quite nice to see because it is rare. But yeah, it looks like Alexa and Charlotte seem to have their next sort of feud as a tag team champions, and it seems to be Alba, Piper. Chelsea's obviously in and around the conversation as well as to whether she will be involved with that. I don't know, but that seems to be the direction for sure, 100%. Nick, what did you make of our opening segments of SmackDown? The announcement that now Samizayn has moved over from Monday Night Raw to Friday Night SmackDown. The MFTs getting up in the face of himself as well as Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu, with that tag match being announced for later on in the show. And then Piper Niven 1-1 with Alexa Bliss, with the Secret Service actually standing tall for once.
Yeah, I think a couple of these segments were kind of flipped on its head as opposed to what we're normally seeing. That, of course, being the good guys, someone standing tall against the MFT. I think that was a nice change of pace with Jimmy, Sami, and Jacob. And interesting enough, I think we kind of talked about it last week or over the last week of the course of it. Sammy going over to SmackDown for that U.S. title. Didn't seem like that would make a ton of sense, but it does appear that's the direction they are going. So for better or worse, Sammy over to SmackDown now. I suppose that's the trade they get back from LA Knight. So make of that, I guess, what you will. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I love the idea of Sammy going after the U.S. title. Feels like a step back, and like I don't know if that was the original. Like this is part of the original arc, or this is kind of a side swipe, or a last minute change. I'm not sure. I guess I'll wait and find out. But that being said, Sammy and Solo, I think will make for some good competition. Good matches. So looking forward to that in itself. But yeah, simple enough setup. I think Solo's entertaining as hell, and so is Sammy. So yeah, good enough segment for what it was. And then for the actual match, Alexa Bliss and Piper Niven, yeah, Piper getting in most of the offense, of course, and and then of course getting a roll up pin. And I am happy to say that there were a couple of themes tonight, and one of them was not a roll up pin and or interference victory. So very happy that this was to announce this is the only one. So that made me smile. I'm a simple man, but I love to see that. And then of course all three members of Secret Harvest getting the last laugh, if you will. And as you mentioned, a rarity in sorts, in that they are not typically on the standing tall portion of these kind of things, even though they do have the numbers. So yeah, I think, like I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think Secret Harvest are a massively underrated team, and should be getting more victories than they do. But yeah, good enough start to SmackDown for me.
Yeah, definitely a talking point with Sammy being on SmackDown now, going after the United States Championship officially. Step back, yeah, possibly you could argue that. Obviously, with him wanting to go for the world title, that's not the world title on either show. So it's a very interesting step in a certain direction for Sami Zayn. I guess we'll see where this sort of does lead him to going forward. But yeah, the the one and only roll up of the show. I expect that you two probably be very happy about that one. We can actually have some other finishes to talk about. So let's go into our next little bit of action. This would be a tag team match, our first of three across the rest of the show. And this would see Fraxium, that'll be Nathan Fraser, and Axiom taking on Melodome Miz of The Miz and Carmelo Hayes. So this is in Boston, this episode of Friday Night SmackDown, which is where Carmelo Hayes is from. So naturally speaking, he's going to get a very, very big pop from the crowd, which he did so, and there were a lot of chants towards him throughout the course of the contest. And I think Mello was looking to impress and looking to really get a feel-good moment for himself at the end of the matchup, which he was about to do so. He had Fraxion where he wanted. He was looking for the nothing but net to close things out. But then the Miz, it would be in his corner. He would tag himself in. He would storm into the ring, hit the skull crushing finale, and would basically take away the moment from Carmelo Hayes. Just sort of the next step of adding a little bit of tension into this reformed team. I can't see it lasting too long. I have a feeling that these two are going to butt heads sooner rather than later. And to the point where Mello is basically just going to be like, right, Miz, look, I'm done with you. Let's leave it there. And that'll obviously spiral into whatever comes from that. But for now, we do have this sort of reformed team back together, and they start off with a important win, I guess you could say, for both of them. Carmelo and Miz not really having the greatest of times as of recent, so Miz has been out for a little while. As to what he was doing, I'm not entirely sure, but now that he's back, getting a win, obviously that'd be great for him. And Carmelo Hayes looking to sort of like get his trajectory going back upwards rather than stagnating on the roster. So yeah, it was a fun matchup between the two teams. Fraxium are always great when they enter those ropes. And yeah, just a competitive tag team match that went back and forth. It was good. It was good to watch. We would then get Drew McIntyre off the heels of that hellacious Claymore from the week before on Cody Rhodes at the very end of the show, taking him out. Drew McIntyre would basically just say that, a lot of people have asked him this week why he Claymored Cody the way that he did last week. But Drew, he would be very insistent. He would say that he didn't actually attack Cody Rhodes. Even though he would show the Claymore on the Tron, he would insist that he didn't attack him. He says that he wants the championship that he's been screwed from having on so many occasions, and that he's earned it, more than anybody else. he talks about the match last week, and again, how he didn't attack Cody, but this time he explains it. He basically says how he plays back the moments of the matchup, which actually leads him to ringside, as you can see in the image just above there. And he would say that the match had already ended in a DQ. But Cody then would attack Drew after that DQ, sort of continuing things, pointlessly, I guess, from Drew's perspective here. Really, the match was finished, so there was nothing else to be done. But because Cody, took out Drew, sent him into the ring post, would clear the table, Drew felt threatened, grabbed the championship, slammed it over his head, and then would hit that hellacious Claymore, which would leave Cody stranded. But Drew would basically claim that he was simply defending himself, and he did what he had to do. Once the dust sort of settles on this particular promo, he basically looked dead into the camera, saying that he is the real Nightmare, and that would be the segment over. But to be fair to Drew McIntyre, he is kind of right. The match was over at the point where Cody did sort of like add insult to injury with a disqualification. But then obviously with Logan Paul and John Cena leaving after that DQ, obviously leaving himself and Drew McIntyre to just fight it out on the outside, maybe that wasn't necessary. Maybe from Drew's perspective, maybe he's got something to say there. Maybe there's some truth in that. And he took out Cody because he felt threatened. So, I mean, one of those situations. Sets up a good feud between both of them now, and excited to see how this one does play out in the end. But for now, Drew McIntyre, having his own sort of segment here. No Cody Rhodes involved whatsoever. Wasn't on the show, so we're interested to see if he's going to be back next week. So at least they're selling the Claymore, which I quite like that they're sort of leaving Cody off the one show to make it seem like it really was a big deal. We would then go into our penultimate match of the night, which was the Street Profits going up against DIY. This match was kind of crazy. There was a lot going on. We have obviously Dawkins and Ford, as well as Ciampa and Gargano in the ring doing their stuff, killing it as always. Two great tag teams here on SmackDown, two of the best that they have. And then we would also have Candice LeRae and B-Fab on the outside. The women being sort of like a pivotal part of these two teams at the moment. And Candice LeRae would look to take out B-Fab quite early on in the contest. That would spark a little bit of a fire from B-Fab towards the late stages, where Stu would get back up in the face of Candice LeRae as she was looking to interfere with the Profits to get the finish. But B-Fab would take out Candice, hits a big kick, laying her out of ringside. That would be enough of a distraction for DIY to leave the door open for the Profits, who would take advantage and get the victory over DIY in the end. But again, like we saw in the previous match, the previous tag team contest between Melodip Miz and Fraxium, this was quite fun. It was high-paced. It was back and forth. It was entertaining. So if there's anything that SmackDown are doing right at the moment, it's 100% the tag team division for the men's side, because they've got so much talent. They've got so many good teams, and they're all killing it at the moment. They're just pushing each other even further up, and it does make for some really good tag team matches. There's so much depth. Like, you're talking like how the Wyatts weren't involved in this show. Neither were Motor City Machine Guns. You've also got like Pretty Deadly, who weren't involved, Andrade and Ray Phoenix. There are a lot of teams that you could argue that could have been on this show, but weren't. That's just the depth of the tag team division. But Street Profits getting a huge win here over DIY, and maybe looking to get back into the title picture very, very soon. We would then go into our main event, which would be the aftermath of what happened at the start of the show. Sami Zayn, Jacob Fatu, Jimmy Uso taking on the MFTs. And this match would go exactly how you think it would go. Sami is, the kind of guy that fights up from underneath all the time. He would be in the match for quite a large part of the early stages, especially. And he would be on the outside at one point. Talatonga's there, roaming like a shark. And he would take out Sami Zayn at one point. Getting back into the ring eventually. Sami fighting from underneath, gets a tag in. And then from there on, it's a little bit back and forth between the two teams. Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu getting involved in places. A little bit of a hesitancy between Jacob Fatu and Sami Zayn as to where they can get on. Obviously, there's a lot of history between Jimmy Uso and Sami Zayn, so there's no sort of lack of relationship and chemistry there between the two of them. But Jacob Fatu, just before this match would take place, a little bit backstage thing, basically saying, look, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know you like Jimmy does. Just don't get in my way, and we'll be all right, sort of situation. And it is Sami Zayn in the end that picks up the victory by Haluva kicking Solo Sikoa, so pinning the United States champion for the second time in 2 weeks on SmackDown. So, Sami, if he's not in the US title picture before, he definitely is now. You don't get back-to-back victories over the United States champion and not get a title match out of this. So I'm assuming that's literally full speed ahead as to where we're going sooner rather than later. But Jacob Fatu and Sami Zayn having a little bit of a moment at the end of the matchup, whilst Jimmy Uso watching on. Seems to be they're sort of on the same page and they seem to be getting along just fine. Sammy even trying to do Jacob's sort of like shaking dance type thing that he does to sort of like rile himself up. It's quite a funny moment to end SmackDown. But yeah, that'll be the end of the show. Nick, what did you make of our second half? Tag team orientated second half with a little bit of Drew McIntyre involved as well, cutting his promo regarding Cody Rhodes the week before. But wins for Melo Dope Miz, for the Profits, and for Sammy, Jacob, and Jimmy. What did you make of our second half?
Yeah, in terms of what we got, I have almost nothing to complain about, which is a rarity for me, especially when it comes to SmackDown lately, ever since that time reduction for the weekly shows. Yeah, Melo Dope Miz versus Fraxium, of course, is always going to be a good match. And as if that tag division wasn't, full enough, we add yet another. The build and kind of let us forget and then let's remember them again. Melo Dope Miz has been interesting to say the least. Whatever was going on with Miz, I think even a lot of people were thinking that he was leaving the company because his social media was acting up and that kind of thing. But regardless, they're here now. We'll see how long it lasts. It seems like they get one match and they're already kind of showing teases of them not being on the same page. And then of course Wyatt Six members were on top of the stairs in the audience as well, so kind of distracting Miz. The throwback to the Miz and Dexter Lumis's issues from the past. So lots to think about there with Melo Dope Miz, of course. And with the other three members there not being the Miz, of course, we expect good matches out of them. But it felt like just noteworthy from me because the Miz, he obviously isn't known as a high flyer or anything, but he holds his own pretty well. This match was pretty interesting and entertaining by all four members. Again, Miz isn't known to be the high flyer of this group, but you really couldn't tell it. He holds his own for sure. And then Fraxon getting another loss, don't love that, but at one time it felt like they were untouchable. But that is just kind of the way the land with this tag division that, as you mentioned, was very heavily focused on throughout the night. Drew McIntyre's promo, I can't really add much more that you hadn't already mentioned. I think Drew is one of the best at what he does, and him saying what he did about Cody and that they injured his golden boy and that's why there's no update. And as you mentioned, what he says was kind of true. So those are the best kind of heels, and Drew is one of the best to do it and probably ever do it. So I think we kind of figured that's where we were going, and it does appear to be the case. Drew and Cody, that should be a good match. Then the Street Profits and DIY, of course, as you mentioned, one of the two of the best, and of course they deliver. Candice LeRae getting involved there again. Interesting little side note there, but wasn't quite enough as the Street Profits are able to get the win there. This is just elite tag matching at its finest. There's really not much else I can add there either. Street Profits getting the win again. Maybe a bit surprising. DIY, kind of similar to Faxium, seems to be eating more losses than wins lately. So, but kind of as I mentioned earlier, this tag division's just stupidly stacked. I think you could argue probably the most depth we've ever seen in a tag division in WWE. And then adding the likes of Melo Dope Miz and MFT seemingly to that as well. Good luck to anyone trying to get a title out of that division. And then the main event, you kind of mentioned is kind of what we expect, but I'll throw a little argument there in that we got a clean finish with a match involving MFT. That is not something we see very often. I think that's fair to say. And then Sammy getting another win over Solo did not. I had just assumed Solo had gotten pinned last week by Sammy. And then, so I assumed MFT would get involved, and then Solo would get his win back here, as WWE typically does the 50-50 stuff. But Sammy getting the win here, and the good guy standing tall. quite the shocking ending. But yeah, I think this is, for me, this was hands down one of, if not the best episode of SmackDown since that time reduction. Um, with obviously a very heavy focus on the tag division, 99% of the show, it felt like, even the women's tag division as well. And then, yeah, only one roll up finish for the entire night, and it's been a long time since we've been able to say that for Raw or SmackDown. So my only complaint is, again, these women's champions and how little they're being featured. Obviously, Julia not even shown, but just mentioned by Kiana, and a couple of segments with her. You don't love that. And then Tiffany getting a couple segments herself, but very brief and not ideal considering those are your women's champions. And I wouldn't make a big deal of it if it's just 1 week here and 1 week there. But now it has been 2 weeks since Tiffany successfully defended against Jade at SummerSlam, and they feel like a footnote. So that's my only complaint really for the entire episode of SmackDown. Like I said, definitely one of the best I've seen in a while. So I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. What were your thoughts on the show as a whole, KP?
Yeah, you sort of glossed over it just then. I think the main criticism I have over this show is the way that the women's championships are being showcased here, or I think lack of showcase. I think that the women's tag titles shouldn't be held by a SmackDown team at the moment, considering it's only a 2-hour show, considering that Raw has plenty of time to showcase the women's tag team titles, and we're not seeing Tiffany Stratton, we're not seeing Julia. Julia wasn't even on the show this week. Like, Tiffany was at least involved in a couple of backstage segments, which I guess you could say, she had some TV time. But I mean, I really am struggling to understand why we're not showcasing them more often. I really don't get it. So yeah, I think personally, for me speaking, this was a pretty poor episode of SmackDown again. They are really in a really big rut at the moment, and I think that the lack of 3 hours going down to 2 hasn't helped them whatsoever. They can't keep a situation like this running for very long because they're not booking their top women, which is just baffling to me. So yeah, you can speak obviously how much the MFTs are being involved at the moment, and obviously fair enough they are. You got the golden boy Cody Rhodes, who obviously is he gets plenty of TV time when he's around, and I think you'd even include Drew McIntyre in that as well. Like he's also, if he's on the show, he's going to get a lot of TV time, and I think maybe he's trying to spread out, because 2 hours is a thing. This is what we're in now. It's a reality. If we can spread it a bit more evenly, not have maybe, like, for example, the likes of Jibby, Jacob, Sammy, and the MFTs have 2 segments, make them have 1, make them have something backstage which leads into the main event. Okay, then you've got like 5-10 minutes at the start of the show for the women. Just decisions like that. I really think the creative team are at a loss at the moment. They don't know what to do with them, and that's why they're keeping them off TV. It seems to be a glaring issue, and it's going to catch up with them eventually when they get to the next PLE and they have to book a random match with no build, because that's what they've literally left themselves to do. So yeah, I don't know. I really am not feeling SmackDown at the moment. Haven't felt it for a while, and I think they're in a very bad position creatively and time management wise. I think this is probably the worst SmackDown. Not this particular show, but as in at the moment in the past like month, 6 weeks or so. This is the worst state of SmackDown I've probably seen it in a very, very, very long time. It's just, there are good matches, don't get me wrong. The tag team division is stacked. Like, I can't complain about that. That is amazing. Like, we can literally talk about the tag team division for ages, and we would never slow down the pace. But the other situations, yeah, that's a little bit tougher, and it's definitely going to catch up at some point very, very soon. And then it'll be too late. It'll be too late at that point, and then it's going to be a bit of a glaring issue for sure. But besides that, what we did see from SmackDown tonight was good. The tag team division, especially, very, very strong. But that's near enough where the good stuff ends. Except for the Drew promo was great as well. But yeah, I don't know. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I just think we're at a pretty scary point here for SmackDown, and it's a sinking ship. It really, really is. I can't see why you've got 3 hours of Raw on Mondays, which are just considerably better than SmackDown. NXT is even way better. Like they've got 2 hours, like SmackDown do, and their shows are fantastic. They have no problems time management wise. They've got their talent all over the place. They're involved always going forward, propelling themselves into, intriguing stories going forward and setting things up for future weeks, always looking ahead rather than backwards and missing people out for whatever reason. This just SmackDown. That's the problem. And they need to fix things ASAP. So yeah, I don't know if you want to react to that quickly before I do sort of close this one out, but I'm just I'm just at a point, I don't know how much longer they can do this for. I really don't.
Yeah, and you might have caught me on the, here you obviously I was disappointed with the women not being featured 2 weeks in a row, and then we're coming up to Clash in Paris, and they're gonna try to put something together for that, if they are at all. But I think for me it was a matter of the previous episodes with the finishes, constant finishes that I can't stand, and then seeing the same kind of like what Raw does, with Division, seeing them start and end the show, with the tag match, holla holla, it feels like it's much of the same, and this is obviously shown more and highlighted more and exposed more because you have less time. But for me, it was just comparatively speaking, this felt, we actually got some good matches. We got some clean finishes. So for me, and maybe that just, led me to, overrate it a bit, just because I was just begging to see something a little better. And so for me, this felt like a step in the right direction. But as you mentioned, obviously, time management, because when the tag divisions, yes, obviously the matches were good. That was the focus of the show. But in the grand scheme of things, did any of these matches really mean that much? You could argue, maybe not. Obviously, some shuffling and status, but they could easily just reshuffle those next week with some more matches. So I think it is kind of imperative that the women do get involved, and for whatever reason, they've always seemed to kind of be on the back step, as of late, and it feels like, even to Mania season, it feels like the women have just been kind of on the back step, of importance, and so hopefully they turn that around. And so if this week features nonstop tag division, next week the women should get a heavy dose of time, or at least something. I think that's my biggest ask.
Yeah, 100%. If they can sort of at least share things around and have a little bit of back and forth between their talent, that would be great. But I don't know if I can see that happening. Julia hasn't done anything in ages, except for that one match against Zelina that was probably about a month ago now. And Tiffany, what has she really done since Evolution? I don't really think she's done anything, has she? She might have had was there a segment with Jade Cargill, I want to say? I don't even remember. But regardless, the fact that we don't remember or don't have a clear idea, and they haven't been involved enough for us to know exactly what's been happening, that's a very, very scary position for the women to be in. So yeah, I just think they've got to try and figure this out. But alas, obviously we could go on to that for a long, long time. This has been our SmackDown recap for this week for Friday Night SmackDown. Guys, let us know what you think. In the comments, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are, whether SmackDown is really as bad as we're making it out to be at the moment, or whether, we're missing a few things, and perhaps actually, there are some good parts in there. Just needs to be ironed out a little bit more. But let us know in the comments what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you like what we're putting out here, please consider hitting a like on our video and subscribing to our channel to keep up with content coming out in the future. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, everybody, and goodbye for now.